Could the Reaper Leviathan from the hit survival game Subnautica survive the Cretaceous period? Today we're going to put the iconic monster from planet 4546b into Earth's deadliest ocean, the Western Interior Seaway of the Late Cretaceous, affectionately known to paleontologists as Hell's Aquarium. You've seen plenty of Subnautica mixed with prehistoric shenanigans on this channel before, but now the alien monsters that Alterra is rightfully terrified of are coming to Earth. We'll analyze the Reaper Leviathan's ability to adapt to the Niobrara Formation, its new home, as well as how reliably it can capture food and deal with native competitors, scoring each category from 1 to 10. Then we'll dive into speculative evolution to see how the Reaper Leviathan could better adapt to the complex ecosystem of Hell's Aquarium. Huge shout out to Mr. 42, who did the 3D models for these Spec Evo Reapers. Before we dive into the details of the Niobrara Formation, we need to understand the animal that we're plopping into the Cretaceous. Reaper Leviathans are arguably the franchise mascot of Subnautica, their most iconic carnivorous leviathan and the one that probably gets the most player kills. Their speed, terrifying roars, and enormous size make them significant threats to unprepared players, and they're highly successful to boot. The crater biome in the main Subnautica game supports a total population of 25 Reaper Leviathans, an insane figure considering how much each of them must need to eat. And boy can they eat. You need an incredible amount of calories to sustain a predator that's 55 meters long and weighs over 1,600 tons. You heard me right, 1,600, scaling up from Earth's oarfish, which have roughly similar body plans but without the spiky armor. So if anything, Reapers are likely heavier. At that tremendous weight, a single Reaper is as heavy as 320 average bull orcas, 123 large Tyrannosaurus rexes, 106 of the biggest specimen of Pliosaurus funke, 35 bull humpback whales, and 7.5 world record blue whales. That is a ridiculous amount of muscle, spikes, and bad attitude that the Cretaceous needs to deal with, and Reapers are not picky. They'll eat just about anything they can fit in their gaping tooth-filled jaws, seizing you with their mantis-like mandibles, and shoveling you into their gullets after shaking you around a little just to put the fear of Alterra in you. Anything skinnier than 2 meters across they can just eat like spaghetti, and bigger animals can be grabbed and torn apart by their mandibles. Reapers do not need to breathe air, a trait that allows them to remain hunting in shallow or deep water indefinitely. They're comfortable in depths down to 1,000 meters, but they can also cut right to the surface or even breach like a whale when given the proper motivation or the right glitch. Fortunately, they seem much less likely to attack players or animals at the very surface of the water, so perhaps they struggle to process movement at the ocean-atmosphere interface. Their jaws are strong enough to damage metal, and they can harm large submarines simply by ramming into them, giving them a punch that most prehistoric animals in real life couldn't dream about packing. But raw physical power, while useful on an alien planet dominated by marine kaiju, isn't everything, and even the legendary Darrow Lycos may find itself out of its depth in Hell's Aquarium. Hell's Aquarium refers to a broad period of time in the Late Cretaceous when the Western Interior Seaway split North America in half. This seaway, as you might expect, was filled with a variety of dangerous megafaunal predators, at a density that would be nightmarish if experienced in modern times. We are specifically covering the Niobrara Formation, a chalky layer that includes about 5 million years of Hell's Aquarium and has its own deadly faunal profile. This was a warm, shallow sea dividing the twin landmasses of Laramidia and Appalachia, each of which had already formed different ecosystems by the time of the Late Cretaceous. Ankylosaurs, Tyrannosaurs, Ceratopsians, and Hadrosaurs dominated Laramidia, while Appalachia had a mix of similar herbivores that had to deal with fleet-footed Dryptosaurs and Carcharodontosaurs. They all lived on land and won't be terribly relevant to the Reaper Leviathan, but just know that there are plenty of large-bodied vertebrates that could get washed out to sea for scavenging. The high density of calcium carbonate-producing invertebrates provided a rich basis for the Niobrara's food web. Bivalves, corals, and mollusks covered the seafloor and created nutrient-wealthy shallows environments that served as the backdrop for a dynamic ecosystem, one of the most large predator dens in the history of the world. Much of the seaway was only 70 meters deep, much more shallow than the deepwater biomes that Reaper Leviathans are known for frequenting, and was quite warm, with water temperatures varying up to 30 Celsius or 86 Fahrenheit according to a 2016 isotopic study. That's actually right in line with the higher temperatures for biomes that Reaper Leviathans are comfortable in, like the mountains or crash zone, the latter of which contains large shallow areas filled with radiation and heavy particulate concentrations. Reapers seem to be able to survive just fine in relatively hostile bodies of water as long as they have enough food, provided they're not completely cramped. They're most likely to stick to the deeper parts of the seaway, however, since they simply have more maneuvering room. Overall, they earn an 8 for home. Yes, Hell's Aquarium is not as expansive or comfortable as Hell's private ocean that they're used to, but they aren't facing any truly significant dangers here, given how we're hand-waving alien respiration versus Earth's water composition. Now, hunger. That'll be a much more significant adjustment. Fortunately, or unfortunately, we already know that Reapers can eat Earth animals, aka humans, without apparent harm to their digestive systems, and the player can digest and get valuable nutrients from 4546b aliens as well. Reapers will eat fish as small as peepers, although that might be more of a cat chasing a laser pointer thing than a dietary preference. Their favorite foods are human-sized or larger, as in sand sharks and bone sharks. Animals in the 3 to 5 meter range are the perfect size for the Reaper's wide jaws without needing additional mandibular processing, regardless of how thick their armor might be. That means large marine turtles might be what the Reaper first recognizes as food. The Niobrara Formation was host to a number of these critters, including lesser-known taxa like Chelosphargus, Tenochelys, and Toxochelys. The more famous Protostega was about twice the size of the modern leatherback turtle, or over 2/3 as big as a sand shark. They'd make nice crunchy snacks for a Reaper, who appears to be an opportunistic durophage via sheer physical power. But Reapers are fast swimmers. Incredibly fast, actually, able to keep pace with Seamoth vehicles that can move at 11 meters a second. They don't need to limit their predatory activities to slow armored prey. That opens up the sleek fish of the Western Interior Seaway, animals like Protosphaerena, a 2 to 3 meter swordfish-like animal with fierce tusk-like teeth. Bonerichthys was much larger, at up to 5 meters, but was a filter feeder, less likely to put up a fight. Not that it wouldn't be better to try to escape a Reaper than resist it, but hey. Pentanogmius was a fast, small-toothed, deep-bodied fish that reached 1 to 3 meters depending on the species, right in that ideal size bracket for a Reaper. Encodus petrosus, a fierce, saber-toothed predator, falls into that category as well at about a meter long. Carnivores eat carnivores eat carnivores. Welcome to Hell's Aquarium. Rhinobatos, a genus of guitar fish that showed up in the Jurassic and is still around today, would likely be fine. Its low profile and bottom-feeding habits would keep it mostly off the Reaper's radar. Schools of plankton-eating crossinathids like Apsopelix, however, would find their numbers being cut short by an enormous, extremely fast carnivore, one so big they'd likely mistake it for terrain at first. The same goes for the dog-sized carnivorous fish Pachyrhizotus. Water-going animals aren't the only ones in danger here. Any airborne animal that regularly preyed on fish is subject to potential Reaper attacks as well, including the bizarrely crested Nyctosaurus and even more famous Pteranodon. That's an ambush tactic used by contemporary sharks like Cratoxyrena, which is believed to have targeted pterosaurs that were floating on the surface of the water and rammed into them with high-speed biting attacks. As mentioned earlier, scavenging off dinosaur carcasses washed out to sea is a viable nutritional strategy as well, with hadrosaurids like Clausaurus and nodosaurids like Niobrarasaurus providing clear examples of this occurrence in the formation. Maybe that would be the Leviathan equivalent of leftover fast food. Diving birds may be some of the most difficult prey items to catch, considering how despite the extraordinary speed of Reapers, they usually attack in a straight line, and have difficulty capturing animals that are good at maneuvering underwater. Hesperornis and Baptornis were agile predators that ate small fish, and would likely be able to avoid a Reaper's charge by simply swimming around it, and then remaining outside of its mouth range. The Reaper's iconic echolocation roar would actually serve as a hindrance to its success here, alerting more agile animals to its presence and causing them to either flee the area or engage in other evasive maneuvers. That forewarning would serve Mosasaurs well, given how as lizards they should have keen hearing, especially in sensitivity to low-frequency sounds, like the ocean-shaking roar of an alien giant. Mosasaurs were the apex predators of Hell's Aquarium, the devil's guard lizards if you will. Small varieties like Cladastes at 2 to 4 meters long still had powerful jaws and likely frequented coral reefs and other shallow areas, hunting small animals there. Their slim bodies could easily hide inside natural shelters if they heard a Reaper approaching. Globidens was larger at 5 to 6 meters and specialized in crunching hard-shelled animals with its nodule-shaped teeth and strong jaws. Its likely pursuit of turtles would increase its contact with Reapers and possibly put it on the menu. Actinosaurus was about the same size, but according to isotopic studies, it would have frequented deeper water in addition to coastal environments, perhaps making it a potential meal item as well. Platycarpus is known from incredible remains, including soft tissue preserving skin impressions and even the outlines of its internal organs. The preserved tail was very shark-like and is part of what informs our anatomical understanding that mosasaurs were extremely fast predators. Platycarpus was right in the size bracket that a Reaper would be interested in, at just under 6 meters long, but its burst speed and superior turn radius would make it difficult for a Reaper to catch. The best mosasaur for our alien friend to pursue might be Tylosaurus, the undisputed apex predator of the Niobrara Formation. Tylosaurus proriger was an enormous sleek carnivore, at 9 to 13 meters long and a body mass of up to 10 metric tons. At least until this morning, as of this video's recording, when the largest specimens were reassigned to a new species, T. rex. Not that T-Rex, Tylosaurus rex, which yoinked the 10 biggest T. proriger specimens and left its older, smaller cousin at a comparatively diminutive 9 meters. But still, T. proriger was a serious predator. Its skull was equipped with robust, sharp teeth capable of crushing and slicing through prey. In most contexts, Tylosaurus would be a final boss animal itself and is physically comparable to mid-tier Subnautica predators like bone sharks. The Reaper Leviathan, however, is 160 times larger, the same proportional size difference as exists between a bull elephant and golden retriever. Tylosaurus was big enough to be worth eating, and by virtue of its size wasn't as agile as its other mosasaur relatives. I'm sorry, my friend, but you may become one of the alien's favorite meals during its sojourn on this watery greenhouse planet. Tyrant Prime sends his condolences. When I said that Hell's Aquarium had a robust food web earlier, I meant it. We even have gigantic carnivorous cephalopods here, namely the huge octopus Ankateuthis. It was twice the size of a human, making it both a formidable mesopredator in the Niobrara Formation and an excellent source of takoyaki for the Reaper. You may have heard about the recently described gigantic specimen of Niobrara hagerti, a cirrate octopus from the Late Cretaceous oceans of Japan. It, unfortunately, did not live in the Western Interior Seaway, as Japan and North America were quite far away during this time period. But if the distribution of modern giant squid are any indication, big predatory cephalopods can really move it if they want to. Perhaps the Reaper could add Nanimateuthis takoyaki to his menu in addition to the Ankateuthis variety. Nanimateuthis was an enormous cephalopod no matter how you scale it, with its 2026 paper estimating it at over 6 meters long bare minimum. That's large enough to treat a human as a proper meal. The higher bound, 18.6 meters, isn't very likely to be accurate, but that would be legitimate Kraken territory if true. Even then, it's still small fry compared to the Reaper Leviathan. The Reaper also doesn't care that shark fin soup is unethical and unsustainable, and would happily devour the monstrous sharks of the Cretaceous, including Rhotoxyrhina, Squalocorax, and Cretalamna. This behavior, along with its preferential targeting of mosasaurs and turtles, could cause serious harm to the overall environmental health of the region. The big predators are getting eaten, leaving the smaller animals to explode out of control. Even a Reaper Leviathan can't regulate the total secondary consumer population of an entire inland sea. Not by itself. Good thing it's not alone. There are even more human-sized or larger carnivores in Hell's Aquarium to help share the load, namely plesiosaurs, the four-flippered, dragon-skulled reptiles that were the biggest carnivores of the Jurassic period. While they no longer reach the fabled 12-meter and 15-ton sizes that they did back then, they're still powerful predators in the Cretaceous. Some early Cretaceous formations, like La Paja Formation in Colombia, boasted absolute monsters like the 10-ton Monquitosaurus and 13-ton Sachikosaurus. Mosasaurs had replaced them as apex predators by the time the Niobrara Formation was deposited, but plesiosaurs still had a valuable role to play as medium-sized hunters taking on fish, birds, and other marine reptiles. Polycotylus was one such animal, at about 5 meters long and weighing a full metric ton, with a medium-sized neck and long jaws ideal for capturing large fish. Dolichorhynchops took that same body plan and shrunk it down to 2 to 3 meters, likely specializing in shallow water, coral reef fish in areas that the Reaper Leviathan would be less likely to frequent. Styxosaurus was an elasmosaurid with one of the coolest skulls I've ever seen. It looks like a xenomorph that decided to become a marine reptile and totally crushed it. At 10 to 11 meters long, with a neck alone at nearly 6 meters, Styxosaurus was adapted to hunt schools of fish and burst its head through the defenses before they could react, snapping up prey and retreating after it had eaten its fill. Its focus on large schools of fish probably meant it hunted in more open water, regions where the Reaper Leviathan was more likely to actively patrol, and so it would need to be extremely cautious when pursuing its own breakfast. The Reaper Leviathan earns a 9 out of 10 for hunger. There isn't one perfect animal for it to hunt, but there wasn't one on 4546b either, and it did just fine. The sheer biodiversity of relatively large animals available for hunting in Hell's Aquarium dwarfs that of the Reaper's home planet, making the menu far superior to what it's used to. Between the sharks, mosasaurs, turtles, plesiosaurs, big fish, other kinds of big fish, giant octopus, and diving birds, there is not going to be a lack of resources for the gigantic, monstrous murder alien to exploit. In Hanger, we explore the question: what could possibly stand in the way of such a creature? Reapers are enormous and powerful, but not invincible. They can be harmed by knives in Subnautica, although that's the equivalent of a human stepping on a sharp pebble. Theoretically, if a Tylosaurus bit a Reaper 120 times within short succession and received no damage in return, it could take down the alien and once again be the biggest kid on the playground. However, that scenario is so unlikely that it's not really worth considering. No sane animal would willingly attack another predator that's more than 100 times its own size, especially one that can move at high speeds and doesn't look like anything that the Tylosaurus has encountered before. The threats here won't be from predation or combat, but competition. If you're fighting a giant that eats metal, you don't throw your sword at it. You bury the dang sword. The biggest sources of competition, aka predators that can eat the native Hell's Aquarium fauna faster and more efficiently than the Reaper can, will be Mosasaurs, sharks, and ichthyodectids. Mosasaurs have incredible burst speed and are large enough to target the heavily armored turtles that the Reaper wants to eat, along with the other native megafauna. The medium to small species can hide in reef environments and evade the Reaper with their superior agility, keeping their precious calories out of the equation. The large Cretaceous sharks got nearly as big, with Cretoxyrhina 8 meters and 5 tons, and could similarly chomp down on big armored prey, pterosaurs, fish, and other high-nutrient animals, using their numbers to potentially starve out the Reaper. Various species of Tychodus would be chomping down on armored invertebrates, although the Reaper Leviathan wasn't likely to be specializing in ammonites to begin with. That many sharks across different size ranges might still be relevant. Ichthyodectiform fish, huge, fast, bulldog-faced predators with voracious appetites and little to no common sense, will be one of the biggest competitive pressures the Reaper has to face. Ichthyodectes, the titular member of the group, typifies the clade with its wide gape, sharp teeth, and 3-meter blade-like body, but it's not the most extreme Ichthyodectiform. Saurodon had a sword built into its lower jaw that it could use as a brutal battering ram, propelling its 2.5-meter body at high speeds and tearing open large prey. Plus, its name kind of sounds like Sauron, which gives it bonus cool points. Zephactinus was the most physically powerful of the group at 6 meters long, and it would swallow prey whole that was half its own size, sometimes suffocating itself for the sake of filling its own belly. This clade of fast, vicious, and enormous predators would go after nearly every animal the Reaper wanted, even when it didn't make logical sense. And yet, the Reaper Leviathan is still a 55-meter, 1,600-ton carnivore that can move at unreasonable speeds. Stopping it by force is not an option, and even with the high density of predators to compete with it, there's an even higher density of food options. The Western Interior Seaway was absurdly productive, with a crazy array of giant animals existing at the same time in the same place without apparent issues. If the thousands of sharks, plesiosaurs, ichthyodectids, and smaller mosasaurs didn't stop Tylosaurus from eating its fill, then it probably won't stop the Reaper Leviathan either, especially since just about everything here is on the menu for it. The Subnautica icon earns another 8 out of 10 for Hanger. Sure, some agile competitors will inevitably take meals before it can, but it's never really going to lack a consistent food supply. This place is culinary paradise compared to the nutrient-starved crater, and nothing here can physically challenge it. In a world without sea dragon leviathans, the Reaper suddenly feels incredibly free. Our spiky friend earns an overall Thrive or Eaten Alive score of 8.3 out of 10, high enough to be regarded as excellent. It's practically untouchable for one. It can easily shrug off harsh environmental conditions and even hunt effectively in shallow water, 2. And the food supply here is so rich that it can glut itself on fish, birds, and marine reptiles without causing enough of an ecological impact to harm itself long term, which was the most crucial factor in its survival. However, that doesn't mean it can't perform on an even higher level. So what are some other forms that the Reaper Leviathan could take in order to better be a sustainable part of Hell's Aquarium? The echolocation roar proved to be a problem, alerting the animals of the Niobrara Formation to the Reaper's location. The first variant evolved to eliminate that bothersome noise, becoming Cryphiovenator ephialtis, the silence hunting nightmare. Cryphiovenator are much smaller than their alien ancestors, at only 20 meters long and 77 tons. That's still far larger than any natives of Hell's Aquarium, but much easier to sustain energetically and to keep quiet. Cryphiovenator are keyed for stealth. Their spikes are significantly smaller and their horns are more hydrodynamic, and they make no noise. Not just giving up the roar, but their skin structure mimics the shape of the noise-canceling fibers on the fins of Temnodontosaurus, making them the enormous, ghastly owls of the ocean. As expected, they function as ambush predators, rushing up from deep water to snatch mosasaurs, sharks, and turtles, biting them in half before darting silently back into the gloom with their victims. The second variant is similar in size, but completely opposite in approach. Rugitus inferni, the Hell Roar, travels the waters around coral reefs and shallow coastlines. Its anterior torso is more muscular and heavily developed than its Reaper ancestors, creating room for incredibly powerful vibratory muscles that amplify its iconic vocals to a catastrophic level. It approaches prey and blasts them with a sound so strong it can stun adult Tylosaurs from 100 meters away and even crack coral, exposing hiding prey animals. Hell Roars will often travel and hunt in mated pairs, using their paralyzing bellows to essentially stun-lock prey before eating their fill. The webs of skin between their spikes slow them down, but they act as a dish to amplify their devastating sonic attack even further, increasing their range. Finally, we have Xiphotitan Tir Morgai, extravagantly named the Sword Titan God of War. Rather than taking the stealthy pursuit approach of Crypheovenator or the bombastic destruction of the Hellroars, Xiphotitan evolved to become patient ambush predators and masters of disguise, like enormous alien flatfish from a dimension of pure terror. Their slower metabolisms and lifestyles allow them to grow larger than their cousins, and adults regularly reach 30 meters long. As a result of their tremendous size, Xiphotitan Tirmorgai have become the untouchable apex predator of the late Cretaceous oceans, and it's not unheard of for them to prey upon their Reaper cousins as well. They bury themselves in the sand, adapting their chromatophores to match their surroundings, watching with eyes that have slowly migrated to the tops of their skulls, and then launch themselves explosively at passing prey. Their spikes operate on a biological spring-loading mechanism, firing forward and impaling victims from as far as 7 meters away in less than a second. They then withdraw, bringing the shish kebab of mosasaur or shark directly to their master's monstrous jaws. What were your thoughts on this Subnautica meets Prehistoric Earth episode? Would you like to see more like it? And don't worry, I do plan on incorporating Subnautica 2 into my stuff now that early access is out. The dread day of Sakabambaspis soon approaches after all. If you'd like early access to videos, you can join the channel at the Mega Theropod tier, which also gives you the same fancy loyalty badges as the Raptor tier. And if you're interested in time-displaced creatures and prehistoric conflicts, you might enjoy my book Extinction Obsidian Dawn. I'm currently hard at work on the second one, and I plan on there being 12 installments in this epic military fantasy series. I'm the Vividen, and I'll see you the next time I get a neat idea about sending kaiju aliens and prehistoric marine life into a spiraling conflict of speculative evolution.